good. It's Grant who's got the goal from the free kick, and we're heading for extra time now, surely.
Flamingo! It is 2-0, and that now surely seals the K-League title for John Buckland Motors.
You're listening to the K-League United podcast, proud partner of Football Nation Radio.
Hello, annyeonghaseyo, or welcome to the K-League United podcast. Matthew Binns here, filling in for Ryan Walters after a couple of weeks away from podding duties. Fear not, though, as I won't be alone in this venture. We are glad to welcome back K-League TV commentator Alex Jensen to the podcast. Thanks for coming on, Alex.
Yeah, so I'm not pretending to be Ryan then?
Not yet. No, you may well be pretending to be Ryan later on if Ryan doesn't turn up.
If he doesn't turn up for the Champions League. Okay, very good.
Yeah, I hope you.
And I'm afraid this is very Spartan. It's a bit like a Suwon FC performance of late. It's it's bare, not a lot to shout about, because I am picking a corner of the house where I'm least likely to be disturbed by my delightful children, one of whom enjoyed a K-League game for the very first time this past weekend.
I was going to say, you not only did you commentate on 2 games this week, and you also managed to squeeze in one, and you squeezed in quite the game in the end. FC Seoul's win over Suwon. First off, how was it? How was it getting there? How was the match when you got there?
Yeah, I missed the first few minutes, but no, I got there just in time to see all the action that was meaningful. Honestly, Suwon FC were woeful. Like really woeful, and it was kind of shocking when they equalized, because they'd not deserved that at all. And the most interesting thing about the game was just being there with the crowd and the atmosphere, and seeing my 10-year-old son witnessing that for the first time. I mean, he'd been to football games before, but he'd not been to a competitive K-League game before. And part of the reason for that is that, in recent years, I've been commentating, and this is also the first competitive K-League game that I've gone to as a fan or as a regular punter, if you like. Since this whole COVID thing started, so it was a really cool experience in that respect. I would say that the game was fun because Seoul scored 3, and in the north stand or north end, whatever they call it, my son and I got to witness some really fun atmosphere. And that was the thing that we've been missing for so long. And so to see the home crowd cheering 3 goals. Back to Suwon FC, though, it's a bit mysterious to me. They in theory, they strengthened over the winter, and they seem to have gone so far backwards in the way they're playing. And, I told my son and some other people that we went with that day that, look out for Lee Seung-woo. He was more or less lost in that game. Lars Velvik, I was telling them, he scored a lot of goals last year. Very little evidence of that. One of them, actually, who I was with, is a Nottingham Forest fan. I was telling him, he used to play for Forest. Again, I don't know if it's too harsh to blame these individuals, but as a team, it's just not connecting for them at the moment. And in the games that I've actually watched professionally, Suwon FC play this year, I've had the similar sort of feeling. They're just not there where they should be. And you compare that with, say, Jeju United, who came up at the same time as them. They've really recovered very, very well and now flying.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the people you're with must have been thinking, does he watch the games every week, as you were pointing out all of those players? But I saw, like, online as well, I saw on Twitter videos. I think there's one from Namu Jun on Twitter. There was a video of the Seoul fans singing after the game, and it should be said for anyone who hasn't really been following it or is only just tuning in for the first time, K-League, we've had fans back in the stadium, but cheering has not been allowed at sporting events. It has been allowed in K-League 2, it should be said. We shouldn't really be only in recent weeks, but this is the first time we've had K-League 1 back in action. It was Children's Day on the Thursday. There was a full slate of fixtures. It was Parents' Day and Buddha's birthday. The dates fell in line this year, and that was on the Sunday, which the game you went to. And the North Stand, North End. Well, actually, I've called it many other things as well as a John Book fan. But Seoul are renowned for having quite a vocal support, and it's good to actually get that kind of support in the stadium again and getting that kind of cheering again.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I actually have a soft spot for Seoul FC because they play in red and blue like my beloved Crystal Palace. And last year they were actually generally pretty fun to watch. But and being fun to watch also means therefore fun to commentate on. But I would say that this is a club that's still going through a huge transition. When you see that they've got a very small scattering of fans there at Seoul World Cup Stadium, it tells you that actually what they did last year was more than just heroic. It was near miraculous. They were tipped to go down, and they finished in the top half. And they had some amazing results along the way, like beating Ulsan, I think, at 5-2, with Velvet scoring, I think, 4 of the goals or something like that.
Yeah, 4 and an assist as well.
Yeah. So, maybe they punched above their weight a little bit last year, but this year they are punching under their weight, and that's why it's such a stark contrast. But it is a club in transition, and I hope for their sake that they stay up, because if they were to go down now, then they might just slip into the struggle of K-League 2 football again and find it difficult to get back up again.
Oh, definitely. I mean, they're one of the highest scorers in the league, but they're also one of the teams that concede the most. Paul and I, before the match with Kindo Kyun, he's the Kevin Keegan of K-League. He doesn't seem to understand how...
He would love it if he beats everybody.
That's it. We were hoping to have fitted that in at some point. But yeah, I think the question, though, everybody really wants to know is that it now? Are you an FC Seoul fan? Is that converted you?
Oh, well, I've said before that I think it's difficult when you're commentating to pin your colours to one particular mast and then have everybody reading. I mean, I'm not so conceited as to think that people are judging every word I say, but if they were to do that, they might read some bias into it. And I can tell you that, funnily enough, when you're working, and I get this with other types of reporting that I've done, emotion kind of has this way of staying out of the picture, weirdly, as soon as you're in working mode. So don't think that is an issue. But yeah, I mean, Seoul is the local team. It's the team that I've seen play the most. It's the team that my son is now very excited about. So the challenge is getting to watch them. I mean, this was a rare occasion where I was commentating on another game that was earlier on in the day, and I had the opportunity to still just about make it to Seoul World Cup Stadium. So, yeah, I guess. I mean, look, it's not Seoul Eland, so there's one other Seoul team, and I live in Seoul, so.
Okay, we'll take that. We'll let you sit on that fence for a bit longer. But I'm glad your son got to enjoy it. I'm glad your son got to see all those. I will say, by the way, that FC Seoul are a team that's very easy to dislike. I think they've been underachieving for years. The size of the opportunity of playing in the capital has just not really been fully capitalized, if I may use that pun. And on top of that, you had all those horrific on and off field blunders during the pandemic. And so if there's any reluctance in my voice, it's because they are not the K-League equivalent of my Crystal Palace that I grew up with. But anyway, but somehow they're getting under my skin when I'm not working. Yeah. Well, we'll be talking a bit more about Seoul later on, but we are going to be going through a number of matches. First, we're going to be going through just a few things we learned from rounds 10 and 11, and then later on, for those missing Ryan, he's actually going to be phoning in from yet another exotic location.
Oh, really?
As he continues his travels through Thailand. We're not going to be discussing Thailand, obviously. We're going to be discussing the AFC Champions League group stages, which wrapped up before round 10 and 11. But before any of that, though, we've got a quick bit of housekeeping for our listeners. With the K-League 1 back, there are also a number of other things back. Branko's 3 takeaways on our website. He looks at 3 things that's happened at each weekend. You can also find, he's now back to including things that have happened in K-League 1. So you can get that on our website every Monday. Also this week, for followers on Patreon, K-League Survivor does return this week, and the picks will be open from Wednesday. So if you're still playing that, if you're still in that, which is not me, and I don't think it's Ryan either, and I think Paul might also be out. So I mean, what do we really know, to be honest? But yes, picks will be open for that from tomorrow. But let's get on with the main thing, and that's the headline for me from the weekend was Ulsan related. Ulsan have finally lost in the league, that is. A bit of a AFC Champions League hangover, perhaps, with Ulsan going out in the Champions League group stages. They lined up against Suwon Blue Wings with perhaps a slightly rotated squad, but I felt the team was still quite strong defensively.
The big thing was that they didn't play a recognised forward, so it was kind of like going back to how they started the season before they had Leonardo join up, and and since then they brought in their Hungarian forward who I haven't seen play yet, because he's not yet made his K-League debut, has he? Costa, I believe his name is.
He's still not made his debut. He wasn't in the squad for that game either. So yeah, it was. I don't know. I think Ulsan probably a bit tired from playing 6 games in 2 weeks. Only travelling back on the Sunday night, I believe they travelled back. But I think obviously the talking point was the red card. There was 0-0 still at the red card. Kim Sung-jun, though, getting sent off for a tackle, let's say. You were commentating on the game.
Yeah, I was commentating.
What did you think of the challenge?
Let me preface this by saying that when you're commentating, you don't necessarily have the opportunity to see quite as many angles as you might think, and you also have to say something. You can't just be silent while you gather your thoughts for a period of time. Likewise, when there's a VAR review, you can't like chat with the referee and see what's going on there either. And sometimes even when the referee's made their decision, it's not clear immediately what that decision is. And as an aside, there's been so many times where teams have scored goals, and you kind of, I think, as a commentator, feel you have to be relatively subdued, because if you go mad, like, imagine that famous Aguero goal in the Premier League when, with the iconic commentary. Imagine if that had been, oh no, it's a VAR review. You sort of, it's always in the back of your mind, is this goal actually going to count, even if it looked good? Or if that, often there's that, they're on the last defender and you just never know. But anyway, coming back to the decision itself, despite all that, I actually wouldn't distance myself too far from what I said the first time around, which was at first, I was shocked to see the red card come out, because I thought it was a heavy challenge, but it did not look like a red card at first glance. Then when I saw the replay, I thought, well, I'm not sure if this is going to be overturned, because once the referee's shown that red card, if you're going to overturn it, in the VAR booth, you've got to be very, very certain that a terrible error has been made. And the fact is, Kim Sung-jun slides in quite recklessly. Now, I don't think he did it maliciously, but red cards don't necessarily have to be malicious, do they? It was dangerous in the sense that he flew in kind of slightly uncontrolled, and he followed through, and at least one of his legs was raised. And so it had the look in the replays of looking a bit like a kind of semi 2-footed challenge, but certainly a high foot in there as well. And you see them given sometimes. So I thought to myself, well, it was a harsh decision, but is there enough grounds here to force a review? Then, of course, there was a review. And I was thinking, right, okay, this is now quite possibly going to be overturned, because obviously the VAR booth has not been convinced. and the referee's going to go and have a look, and he's got the opportunity now, and he still gave the red card. Now, at this point in the conversation, I would just point back to, I think it was against Seoul, wasn't it, earlier this year, when Ulsan had a penalty decision go their way, and I think possibly Leonardo scored the penalty from. I mean, I'm not like one of these commentators with an encyclopedic memory, but I think we're all in the smartphone era now where we need to check things sometimes. But it was a late goal that Ulsan scored, and they benefited from a terrible VAR decision where the referee had come across, seen it a million times. It was clearly not in Ulsan's favour, whatever it was, and Ulsan benefited and earned their last gasp winner of whatever it was. And so I felt, and this is what I said at the time, that over the course of the season, these VAR decisions, they kind of, and not just the VAR, but also the referee review decisions, they kind of even themselves out. Now, I'm not a referee, not qualified referee. I felt like it was in a grey area. It was on the harsh end of the grey area, but it wasn't like he totally missed the player. It's not like there wasn't a high foot. So there have been worse red cards in the history of football. And in fact, there have been worse red cards in the last couple of years, probably, in the K-League. There's certainly been more controversial goal decisions and penalty decisions than red card decisions. But, you know, that's where I stand on it. I think, you know, Ulsan are hard done by. It was clearly a game-changing event. It gave the Blue Wings more belief than they'd had up until that point. But what I said also after the red card was, well, I'd still make Ulsan favourites here, because how many times have we seen a team go down to 10 men and still be all right?
Yeah.
This was the way Ulsan play. This was not a player who should have transformed their game. It wasn't Vako being red carded. It wasn't a creative player in that sense. They still had the opportunity to break down a Blue Wings side that wasn't exactly throwing everything at them. And instead, they ended up sitting further and further back. And only in the second half, when they went 1-0 down, did Ulsan suddenly come alive again. So I think they still shot themselves in the foot. And clearly, they're, you know, just to come back to what you said earlier, clearly there is a Champions League hangover, because in the same way that Daegu have massively benefited from the Champions League form they had, Ulsan are obviously the other way, and they even went 1-0 down against Gangwon. And when I saw that scoreline this past weekend, I was thinking, you know, here we go again. But obviously they turned it around.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I kind of agreed with you on the penalty. When I saw the penalty, I just thought it was kind of reckless. He just didn't have any control. It looked like he was sliding. He had his feet up in the air. I thought a yellow. I definitely thought he deserved to be punished, but I didn't know whether the red or not. But yeah, it's
But you know,
difficult.
Matthew, you know, like in the old days before these reviews, and it probably still happens, but certainly before the reviews, that the recourse would be you'd go to a panel and they would review it. And for me, growing up as a Palace fan, every time Palace appeal the red card, I don't think we ever had them overturned, even when they were blatantly unfair, unjust. So yeah, I don't think Ulsan should be licking their wounds for too long over this. No. They still had the chance to take 3 points from that game.
They still did, and they were quite fortunate that Jeonbuk aren't exactly in second at the moment, but Jeonbuk dropped points elsewhere, so Ulsan still didn't really lose too much ground at the top, still 8 points clear. And
well,
the goal
let me ask you a quick question. Can I ask you a quick question on that as a Jeonbuk fan? Because it's just remarkable, isn't it, how every year fortune seems to favour Jeonbuk, and here we are with Ulsan building a seemingly insurmountable lead early on, and then they lose to the Blue Wings. You must have been thinking at that point, you know, what a way back in.
I was, but I was also thinking that because Jeonbuk had played earlier in the day, I was just left thinking we just squandered an opportunity there with
that's
Seoul
true.
And
Seoul's equaliser.
Yeah, Jeonbuk seemed to be. It's been a tough season watching Jeonbuk this year, it has to be said. They're still in a bit of an unbeaten patch at the moment, but it can be painful viewing at times. And yeah, they've got to take these opportunities when you can with Ulsan, and it's going to be. I'm laughing because it does make me laugh, but I mean, if Ulsan were to lose it this season after having run away.
I'd still say, I mean, we don't gamble here in Korea, do we? But well, not in the same way as in other parts of the world. But if you were to force me one way or the other, I'd still probably put Jeonbuk as title winners this year, just because of recent history and what it's told us. And Ulsan, while sort of like at least half my brain tells me Ulsan probably will win the title, there's this overriding sense that Jeonbuk are gonna somehow conspire to win it again. Also, and Ulsan will conspire to lose it again. It's just amazing how that's been the story of the last few years, how close it's been.
Yeah, Ulsan, always gonna Ulsan, but we're gonna see we'll see what happens this year. Maybe this is their year. Maybe there's no Champions League to worry about. So we're gonna find out.
Last time I spoke to Ryan, I thought Seoul might have a chance. By the way, because I thought that this was a year that I'm not convinced as manager of Jeonbuk, Kim Sang-sik. I wasn't, convinced by Ulsan's lack of forward options at the time. They've since strengthened them. And I thought, well, why not another team just burst in there? And I think Seoul on paper are good enough, but they do lack a striker themselves. But they always underachieve. So there you go.
Ryan is laughing in the green room now. You can see we're getting a sneak for us doing the pod. We can see a sneak peek into the exotic location he's chosen this week. So continue to stay tuned in for that Champions League wrap up later, everyone. But yeah, Ulsan, they did lose. They did, as you mentioned, they came back against Gangwon later at the weekend, and seemingly all is back as it were for now. But you did mention Seoul there. You had tipped Seoul. We had talked a little bit about Seoul at the beginning, but Seoul. From the team perspective, Children's Day, they got a last-minute equaliser against Jeonbuk, Park Dong-jin, much to my delight.
Yeah.
Commentary. I believe I was muted for the last 3 minutes. But it was, yes. I'm surprised the grinding of teeth could not be heard internationally. I was very, very. There was choice words I was holding back, but. It has to be said, Seoul, they did play well against Jeonbuk, and then they provided further evidence of their improvement against Suwon FC. Again, a game you mentioned you went to. It was 3-1 in the end, 0-0 at the break, but Osmar making it 1-0. Kim Sung-jun for Suwon FC coming on for Kim Hyun, who himself was a substitute. He made it 1-1 in fantastic fashion. Absolutely amazing goal
out of nothing.
Yeah, but quickly back in Seoul's advantage. Kim Sin-jin with his first for the season, a far post header before the right back Yoon Jong-gyu getting another excellent goal from the edge of the area. A couple of really well taken goals in there. Another red card to talk about. Park Joo-ho getting sent off.
Yeah, I didn't. That one I had a very poor view of from that north end, and I didn't see any replays of it at the time. So I honestly I can't really comment on that. But I don't think the red card had much of a bearing on the game in that one.
No.
Much less of a bearing actually, even than the Blue Wings one, because Suwon FC was so poor, and they just continued to be poor. I take no pleasure in that at all. I would have much rather, even supporting Seoul that day, I would have much rather see Suwon FC have a good go of it and see, Lee Sung-woo and Velvik show my friends what they're all about, because no one wants to beat a team that's not showing much for themselves. I mean, okay, yeah, you do want to beat them. Slight hyperbole there, but it's much more satisfying to win an exciting game. And Suwon FC had their problems. As for Seoul, though, just to talk a bit more about them, because we talked more about the fandom side before. I think Seoul, the most appalling thing that they do is this constant obsession with passing it out from the back.
Yeah. When
probably Ki Sung-yong and Osmar are the only players who are equipped to do that, and even then, they have their moments. And Young Han Bin is not a goalkeeper I would entrust with that sort of sweeper keeper role either. So I just don't know what they're doing. Anik Soo has an interesting managerial CV. I don't know. I like him instinctively, but I'm just shocked that he has them continually playing with their lives
Yeah.
You do that
Well,
over the course of the season, you're going to get punished.
he
And, Seoul are looking toothless up front. They've got to sort that out. I mean, having Pak Dong-jin back is great, but he can't do it on his own. They need someone. If John Book can't figure out Gustavo Ilyachenko, then give Seoul one of them.
I'm sure they'd love one of them. But it is a good point. It's something Paul and I noticed. We noticed it in both games. We could watch both Seoul, just like you watched both Suwon Blue Wings games this weekend. We actually watched both FC Seoul games. And against John Book, there was 2 opportunities for John Book where the passing out of the back went wrong. And then even against Suwon, there was opportunities for Suwon where they're playing out of the back. And it's so strange because they up front, well, first of all, I should say Seoul have the highest possession stats in the league, but not only that, the top 3 highest passes in the league are Osmar, Lee Han-bom, and Ki Sung-young, the 2 centre-backs and the defensive midfielder, just showing how much Anik Soo likes to put on this passing out from the back. But as they move forward, they just decide to stop doing all of that passing and just shoot on sight. Against Seoul, they'd had 6 shots at halftime. Only 1 was on target. Every single time, Nasanko, I know he's got the most goals for them this season with 4, but I mean, 3 of them were from the penalty spot. He's just bringing it inside. He's second in the league for dribbles, 1v1, 1v1 dribbles. I really like Nasanko, but this season keeps dribbling it inside, taking the shot from the same point at the edge of the area, and against Suwon, it just every one of them daisy cutter, just and wide as well, not even on target. And I mean, you can't really say much for his other teammates. Cho Young-uk's had a couple of them as well. They just kept shooting on sight. But you're thinking, well, you're quite happy to pass it around the back, but they just seem to panic when they get up front. And I think a few teams do that, and it's probably the biggest differentiator between the teams that are title contenders and those who aren't, is that final third. And actually, it's where John Book have probably been problematic this year, because Ulsan are consistently the most exciting team moving forward in the opposition's half, and doesn't always result in things going their way, but they're the most interesting looking team going forward, probably consistently. I mean, every team has their moments, and Seoul certainly had their moments in the end in that Suwon game. But it's infuriating to watch any team endlessly recycle the ball in their own half. It's like, come on. Indeed.
Who cares about 65-70% possession if that's how you're winning it?
Well, yeah, exactly. But it should be said, Seoul did play some good football in the end. But there are things to work on for Seoul, but still reasons to be cheerful, perhaps, going on for the rest of the season. 4 points from a possible 6.
And there's still a transfer window.
There is still a transfer window.
I think a lot of teams will have to do some deep thinking on that front. But the table is just quite interestingly poised right now. So Songnam is the team that I'm sure many people would pick to go down. But after them, the other teams to be in contention for relegation, it's very, very tight. And even the title race is pretty open because of Ulsan's expected frailty. So as fans of the league as a whole, we should be pretty excited about this year.
We should be indeed. And speaking of tightly poised league table positions, we're going to be going back into the top half, talking about Jeju and Daegu, and we'll do that after this quick break.
FNR is a revolutionary football-dedicated digital platform, the first of its kind in Australia. It provides a 24/7 live online radio platform experience, podcast hub, and acts as a content provider for TV, radio, and digital. Having reached millions of listeners and football fans since launching, FNR is accessible worldwide via its website or app, providing a platform to discuss, debate, and celebrate the world game. We are your voice of football, FNR Football Nation Radio.
Okay, welcome back to the K-League United podcast. Matthew Binns here, and I'm joined by Alex Jensen. Alex, before the break, we were talking about reasons to be cheerful for Seoul, and we were talking about Ulsan finally losing. But there were a couple of other teams who had encouraging showings this weekend, and we're going to start with Daegu. You covered their second game of the weekend. Their first game of the weekend, their Children's Day match, it was a 1-1 game that was decided by the goalkeeper in the end. Oh Sung-hun with an assist, going up for the corner, heading it onto one of his teammates and into the net. But it was their game on Sunday that we are particularly going to focus on, and this was their thrashing of Suwon Blue Wings.
Yeah, I mean, because as you say, I think for Daegu, they'd had this run that on paper looked quite poor, but I actually was saying at the start of the game while commentating the Blue Wings one that I felt that the form guide was a bit of a misleading one for Daegu, because when I'd seen them earlier in the year, they'd actually been pretty good at times, and it just wasn't quite happening for them. But there were a lot of green shoots there, I felt, on show. And they, again, familiar story, they were lacking the forward option with Edgar unable to stay fit, and they obviously have exchanged effectively Edgar for Jeka. I don't know how you say that. Is it Zeka or Jeka? I mean, on the back of his shirt in Hangul, I always just say Jeka because that's the Korean way of saying it. But I imagine it's somewhere between a Z and a Korean J. But either way, he, at 25 years old, what a great signing. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that having a Brazilian manager has helped bring that transfer about. He's got all the right attributes for a K-League team. He's got the target man capabilities, but he's decent with the ball at his feet as well. And actually, I think it might take him a bit longer to bed in, but if he hangs around, I could see him being a top scorer in this league at some point. He's got something about him, and this was a result that was probably just waiting to happen, that the Blue Wings thrashing, as it turned out to be in the end. Pohang are a team that's been in form. They're tough to play against. I think Daegu Pohang, they're often quite interesting encounters that are difficult to call. But the Blue Wings game, what was supposed to be, I think, the Lee Byung-gun story, that the Blue Wings manager facing his former club, that was very harsh in allowing him to go at the end of last year after leading to their best ever finish, and beating Ulsan the game before. Everything was pointing at the Lee Byung-gun fairy tale, and it was the Alexander Gama fairy tale in the end. The Brazilian Samba beat 2 Brazilians on the score sheet, and a comfortable victory. But when you look at it in the context, not so much the league form, but the Champions League form, it was just pretty much a continuation of what they were doing there. I know that it was a bit misleading. I mean, one of their Champions League games, they scored, I think, 7 goals. And so Jeka has 6 goals overall, and maybe, it's sort of slightly exaggerated, but he still got 6 and 6. And Cecinha was playing in only, I think, one of those Champions League games. So actually, Daegu's form in the Champions League showed that they could play a bit, and that they could win games, and they could score goals, and they could enjoy high-scoring games, and they put that all to good use against the Blue Wings.
Indeed, yeah. And speaking of that, we do have a question in the mailbag, which we're not going to do a mailbag today, but we're going to just pick questions. If anybody has questions as well, they can get comments in and we'll try and answer them. But we've got a question from the Jongul-yong Appreciation Society on Twitter. I don't want to oversimplify things too much, but how many of Daegu's problems are fixed by having Cecinha back healthy? Have they maybe just turned a corner? I mean, the thing is, as you just kind of mentioned, they didn't really need him in the Champions League. They finished top of their group and got through. But I mean, as a league campaign goes, you can't. Having Cecinha back is a massive boost.
I mean, I get the kind of feeling with Cecinha that you could sort of switch the sky blue of Daegu and put him in a Man City shirt, and he wouldn't be out of place. Not entirely. He's on his day. He's a very, very good player, and he's been a Daegu legend. So for anyone to say for a second that they're not going to miss him would be madness. But to try to not say the obvious, I would add that even if he were to have another spell out for a bit now, that the acquisition of Jeka up front and having Bruno Lamas, different sort of player to Cecinha, but still a creative player who's definitely offering something different. As well as these battling young Korean players like Lee Jin-yong and others who will do a different type of job. And and I think they've got a good defensive unit as well. Even though they've, I think, conceded quite a lot, they've actually got some, very, very strong defenders there. Park Byung-hyun, or Park Byung-hun, sorry, one of those names with a Y that it's quite hard to say when he's that fast when you're commentating. He got injured again, which is such a shame. But I'd say that overall the balance of that team is very good, and they've got the ingredients to be a top 4 team, no doubt about it. And with Cecilia there, maybe even better.
I think so. And the manager Alexander Gami, he's got a great CV, and I think that ACL, it might do what it did for John Buck mid-season last year. It might just give them that momentum now. They've had a bit of a rough start to the beginning of the season, but they've got the new acquisitions in. It's a shame that Edgar can't be with them, but they've managed to replace him well for this season.
Yeah.
I think that momentum's going to really help propel them now as the season kicks in.
I've got to say, I don't know if this is a controversial view or not, but I've never been a huge fan of Edgar. He seems like a really nice guy, and in the air could be very deadly. But while I've been commentating, at least, he's been at the tail end of his career and not the most mobile, very injury prone, and sort of scoring goals when they've been very much created for him. Whereas I think someone like his younger replacement, Ijeka, has more about him when the ball's at his feet. And I could see him creating more and making himself more available for chances.
I think Rika the Hedgehog's going to be coming for you, saying that about Edgar. Rika and Victor are coming round bringing the heavies. But yeah.
That's going to be more controversial than my red card opinion, is it?
Yeah.
But I just think that it's not just him. They've got options there. That they perhaps need to. I mean, when they start, the thing about them is maybe depth in those attacking positions. Like when they start having to rely on Egan Hall, for example, who's going to do a job to a certain extent, but he's not going to be a match winner necessarily. And if that's their best option when Cecilia or Jeka's injured, then and Jong Chi-in hasn't really convinced in the time that I've been watching him. He has his moments, but they've got to maybe think about using the summer window to further strengthen their attacking options.
Definitely. And speaking of match winners, there was only one team that won both matches across the Children's Day and Parents' Day, and that was Jeju United. Jeju took the full 6 points, 2-1 against Songnam, which I think surprises very few people there, given Songnam's recent form, but 3-1 against Gimcheon on Sunday. A hat-trick for Joo Min-kyu as well, a header, a half volley, also a penalty in between those as well. I think we'll keep this one a little bit shorter because neither of us really we weren't we were watching those other games, but it feels that we can't really overlook Jeju in this. Joo Min-kyu, surely, why is he not being considered by Paulo Bento? I think that's my question.
Yeah, well, before the hat trick, you might have said, well, was last year going to be not a one-hit wonder, but like a swan song wonder kind of thing. But the way he's played that role for Jeju in a team that's actually doing extremely well, if you make the Suwon FC comparison, you look at maybe different budgets at play and whatever else, but if you think about the way that Jeju evolved over the winter, and then they come into it and they're just improving and looking like really good for a top 4 claim. And a lot of people like Jeju because they like the holiday destination, I think, as well. It's a great story. I'd like to see more of them to make a proper judgment, though, like you suggested. But one thing I will add is that to beat Incheon 3-1, I mean, that's not an easy task. No one is brushing Incheon aside for the last couple of seasons, at least.
Yeah, Gimcheon have, they've really bolstered with their army recruits, and they're also favourites in themselves. So yeah.
Oh, sorry, you said Gimcheon. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I was. Don't worry.
Sorry, I was going to say I wasn't sure whether it was Incheon or not, and then I didn't question it because I thought I heard you say it. But actually, the same. You're right.
You can take it. Don't worry.
We can apply to them. No, seriously, the same applies to them. That they are a tough team to play.
Mhm.
And you've got teams like, to make a broader point and to sort of rescue it somewhat, I think you got teams like Pohang to a certain extent, even though I'm not convinced they're going to maintain the heights that they've reached so far this season. Kimchon, Incheon, Gangwon, surprisingly, who've been awkward teams to play against. And when you got teams doing that, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, who's going to be in the relegation threat? Like, are we going to
Besides
be
Songnam.
talking about
Then.
Suwon FC and maybe the Blue Wings, in a relegation threatened scenario? And if not them, who else?
Well, yeah, exactly. And this year as well, it's the bottom three. It's not the bottom two anymore. So more storylines to be had this season. And yeah, I wouldn't have given Suwon Blue Wings unless Lee Byung-kun really can work his magic over the summer. They could really be in trouble as well. But it's so tight this season.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That I mean, I don't know why Daegu didn't do whatever they could to make sure that they had a happy relationship with Lee Byung-gun, but I feel sorry for him personally that if this doesn't work out with the Blue Wings, it's going to be like everything he's done with Daegu will have been, not wasted, but it'll be hard to restore that reputation.
Definitely. Okay, well, first Jeju up to third in the table. Now they're in the Champions League contention spots, obviously really early in the season. Speaking of Champions League, though, the group stages did wrap up before these rounds with K-League teams recording a mixture of results. So we're actually going to be cutting away now to whatever tropical location Ryan has set himself up for shortly. But
I'll switch over to fan mode then. But thank you so much for doing this, because normally I'm talking to myself.
No,
literally when commentating.
Well, sometimes me and Paul can hear you next door, and it is always great to. We always know there's a goal coming because it's getting excited. It's not like listening to the Korean commentary where it could be a goal at any point. There's just people screaming. I don't know what's going on. I know that if your shot comes in, I know that I've got to rush out from the kitchen to find out what's going on because clearly something is happening. But Alex, yes, people can listen to you on K-League TV every weekend. But also, if anybody wants to find you online, anybody wants to follow you online, how can they do so?
Well, with the caveat that I'm not really as active as I should be, but on Twitter, Alex Jensen News, Jensen, Alex Jensen News, all one word. It's not the most active Twitter account in the world, but occasionally if something wild happens, I might post there. I'm also doing other freelance news coverage from Korea, so you might find is this the same guy who's talking about North Korea's latest possible nuclear test? Well, yes, it is, because that's what happens when you're a freelance journalist with a sports broadcasting background.
That's it. So if you want your hot nuclear missile takes and your hot red card takes, you know where to go. Alex, thank you very much for coming on. It's always great to have you on, and we're going to have you back on later in the season for sure. But for now,
look forward to it. I'll check all the fixtures next time. In my defense, I was straight to Seoul World Cup Stadium, and it was a late night afterwards, and it took a long day of recovery yesterday. Yes, feels like 2 days ago, but it was yesterday.
No worries at all. Okay, Alex, catch you later. Cheers again for coming on.
Yeah, see you later. Bye-bye.
Fans, we want to hear from you. You're encouraged to email KLU at info@kleagueunited.com or tweet at K-League United with any questions, comments or reactions. Or ask directly during one of our live shows.
Hello, welcome back to the K-League United podcast. And with Alex out, we brought in a substitute all the way from Thailand. Ryan, far less tropical than we were building up here. I thought he might get something out the bag here, but no, it looks like you got a nice hotel.
Yeah, it's not bad. I'm in Chiang Mai now, so I'm up north. I'm in the jungle. I do have like a nice little patio area out there, but the outdoor light attracts insects the size of which I do not care to hang out with tonight. I saw I saw quite a few of them last night when I was out there on the balcony overlooking a very tiny little pool where I'm staying here. And I thought that might be a good spot, but yeah, I'm cool without any other guests showing up for this segment. So you get to just see the backlighting and what is clearly a hotel room. Sorry. I mean, 2 days ago, I could have had a nice a balcony view of the ocean from Krabi, but oh well.
Well, 2 days ago was Parents' Day action in K-League, so yeah, we wouldn't have been tuning in to listen to you because we had far more pressing concerns to be tuning into. But you are currently enjoying a little bit of time off, a little bit of downtime after your Champions League coverage.
Yeah, the totally normal Champions League coverage of being there in person with Jeonnam Dragons playing in Champions League. It was really surreal. I was lucky enough to go down into the stands for the last game, which I was unlucky because that was a 0-0. I mean, which was, on paper is a really good result against BG, but got to go down there, do some chanting, jump around a little bit. Not as much as I wanted to. Would have been great to get a goal, but really, really great experience. And I have to say hats off to all the folks at BG because they did a really great job hosting that. Stadium's quite nice. There are rumors that there's going to be a fourth side added soon, which I think would really, really kick that up a notch, even if it was just a really low stand, hopefully with a roof. But because good Lord. I did have the luck of being in Bangkok during the hottest time of year. So now that I'm up north, it's a pleasant, 36 during the day or something like that. 34.
Oh,
chilly.
We were up to the mid-20s today in Korea, so the summer's coming.
That's right.
That lovely summer's coming. But yeah, we're not here to talk about weather.
Sorry, John.
Sorry, John, if you're listening. We are actually going to try and wrap up the group stage. We're going to go. We're going to go Daegu. We're going to talk the highs. Daegu top in their group. We're going to talk about Jeonbuk going unbeaten. We're going to talk about the lows for K-League. That is, and that's Ulsan heading out. And we're going to then try and bring things back on a positive note with Jeonnam's. Jeonnam's plight in this competition, and they just should hold their heads up high. But yeah, let's go straight to Daegu first because they topped their group. They topped their group, and wow, they look good doing so in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this one, obviously, Shandong Taishan was never really going to be in this because once again, the CSL team sent their kids, as we've talked about before. But for Daegu to come in the same group as Urawa, who have won this competition twice, one of a very few teams to have done that, and a very ambitious Lion City Sailors side, I think this is quite the achievement, and it really came at a time that they needed this. And as you and Alex were just talking about, I think it has carried over into their league form. I also don't know how to properly pronounce Zika. I've been saying it Zika because it's close to Rika, and I just want that to be a thing. I'm pretty sure Zeka or Zeka is probably closer. But what a way to get him going. And I think that was really great to see that. And I think they were in a good group in a lot of ways because those Lion City Sailors matches, those weren't easy. No. And that is a good team. And I think that for folks that aren't as familiar with AFC Cup or haven't been watching the Singapore Premier League, I mean, as Rish would always say, go and watch the Singapore Premier League. It's free on YouTube with English commentary. But Sung-woo Young is a hell of a player, as he showed in that tournament. We all know Kim Shin-wook. We all love Kim Shin-wook.
We'll dream of a team of Kim Shin-wooks.
We do indeed. So it was a really talented team. And to be able to see them off, I think, was massive. And the way that the schedule worked out for Daegu to get a result in back-to-back matches against Urawa, to get that narrow 1-0 win, and then to keep them scoreless in 2 matches, which, the 0-0 is maybe not a sexy result, but man, job done. Really, really good stuff from Daegu there. And I think this is where I think they've turned a corner for the year.
Definitely so. And yeah, as we mentioned, I think they did it without Cecilia, and that was really important for Daegu to prove that they're just not a one-man team. And obviously, Sinya's synonymous with Daegu, but it's good to see that they don't have to just rely on him. And I personally, I think that loss to Lion City Sailors, while it was a shock and a gross underestimation by Daegu in approaching that match, I think it was a shock at the right time. I think that's what they needed to realize, oh, hang on, we can't just walk this competition. We need to take it a little bit more seriously. And they have done so. And yeah, the momentum is carrying on into the league. Momentum carrying on to the league, perhaps. Well, momentum's a difficult word when it comes to John Buck because they went unbeaten. They went unbeaten in the Champions League, and they are now 11 games unbeaten across all competition. Where is that crisis chat now, Ryan?
Yeah.
Wasn't me.
Definitely
here. Not panicking. But no, unbeaten. I don't know whether they're convinced of their competition winning credentials. I don't know, though, whether that was partly due to how they had to manage the squad with so many players being out. They went out into this competition, the first 2 to 3 fixtures, they had a lot of key personnel out. They had to make quite a few changes. Obviously, with the team of John Buck's depth, you have to take that with a bit of pinch of salt because the players that are coming in should be able to do the job. But you still, they didn't have a Chinese team in their group. They had 3 very difficult opponents, in my opinion, or tricky, you could say, about Sydney FC. Yeah, I think
that's being nice. I think Sydney were woeful in this tournament.
Yeah, they were awful. I can't believe.
They were really bad. They were.
I can't
really
believe
bad.
John Buck didn't just. Yeah, well, that's it. That's John Buck, isn't it? I mean, they drew their first game against Sydney. That was when they had the most players out. It was their opening match, and so I kind of, and I kind of accepted that result. And the second result against Sydney, I think that was quite a turning point for John Buck in the fact that they came back from behind and they played really, really attacking football in that second half. But as with John Buck, those flashes of attacking brilliance, they're becoming fewer and far between.
Yeah.
But you can't complain. Like going unbeaten, 3 wins, 3 draws, beating Yokohama F. Marinos, which was the deciding factor, which allowed them to qualify with a game spare, despite being second, because complications. So it allowed Kim Sang-shik to send people home for that Yokohama game. That Yokohama game, he sent home his first defence. John Buck had a full strength defence out for Seoul because they'd all been back days before the rest of the team. So in a way, the squad was managed well by the manager. The tactics less so.
I think the only area that I would argue against that is I wouldn't have replaced Ibum Su. He's in form. You're only there for 2.5 weeks. We all know what Songbum Kun brings to the table, but I just didn't understand the necessity to throw him back in there when, Ibum Su was in the best 11 twice in the first 3 games that he was in there. And rightfully so. He was outstanding. And I don't understand why you would replace somebody that's in that good a form for somebody coming in cold. And I don't, Song wasn't at his best.
And you can imagine he'd come through COVID and he hadn't been with the team. And I think he had to fly out because you can't really just have 2 keepers in case one gets injured. He had to be there. But yeah, I agree with you fully. I don't think he needed to play at all. I think Ibum Su had it covered. Song, he'd clearly had a bad bout of COVID, apparently. So just let him sit on the bench and be there if he's really needed to come in. Wouldn't even have to be in the bench. He could just be in the hotel room and move to the bench if required. And then he could have even gone home early and got ready for the Seoul game.
Exactly.
In fact, Ibum Su did all right against Seoul. It was he was not the one who conceded.
I just don't understand that thinking. But John Buck are in the end through to the knockout rounds for the 13th time. Which is a record matched only by Al Hilal, who folks may have heard of.
Yeah, there's some team in the other side of the competition.
Some team from the West. I don't know. They do all right in this competition.
Yeah, they're right. But they are going to be versing Daegu, who we've mentioned. So that's going to be interesting. It is a bit of a shame that the 2 K-League teams are meeting each other so early on in this competition again. It does mean that we will get a K-League side in the quarter-final, though, and it could be an interesting clash. Daegu, Jeonbuk, they've been entertaining affairs before. Jeonbuk's tend to dominate the fixtures, but it's a cup game. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, and in neutral ground, so we'll see. I mean, I don't know. Daegu doesn't do that well in knockout tournaments when the pressure's on, if you know what I mean.
Very true. We'll have to preview that closer to the time, but on the other end of things, while Jeonbuk went through unbeaten, while Daegu topped their group, ACL 2020 champions and ACL 2021 semi-finalists and K-League 1 leaders with a whopping points difference at the tops, expected to stroll the group. Yes, Ulsan leave with their tail between their legs.
Yeah, Ulsan. A lot of talk about Cho Yeonu in this one. I think he got a lot wrong. I mean, we talk about him as one of the best keepers in the league with good reason. I think shot stopping wise, he is, and I don't think there's any questioning that. But his decision making throughout this tournament was not top notch. I mean, that first match against Kawasaki, it's probably the only time that you'll hear me say a keeper should have punched the ball, and he should have just punched it clear. And he went for the catch, and that got screwed up, and Kawasaki gets an equalizer in a match that Ulsan should have won. You know, and then you go out and you lose to JDT twice, and this is a very special run that JDT is on. I'm ecstatic to see them in the knockout stage. I think it's great for the competition. I think it's fantastic for that team. Malaysian football, it's good all around, and it's earned from JDT for sure. You could argue you didn't have to give them that goal in the last match, though. Again, the decision making, there just seemed to be a hesitancy there. There are threads and threads on Twitter about this, so I won't go into it too much.
I was going to say, I want to know. Go on, Ryan. What's yours? What's your take?
I mean, I'm never really for punching the ball in general. Not if you can cleanly catch it and control the play. And this is a perfect example of why. Yes, okay. Yeah. You've got to keep the play alive. Ulsan need a goal. Yes. But if you just punch willy-nilly or you get it wrong, which he got it wrong again, then this is what happens. Like, this is a catastrophic. I haven't been on the podcast in a while.
I was going to say, that's it's been a while.
Catastrophic. Unique New York. How now, brown cow? There. These are the warm-ups I should have done first. The arsonist had oddly shaped feet. Anyway, I think in that instance, if you just catch it and you control it, I mean, catch it and throw it really quickly, or I mean, a draw doesn't really do much for them. I mean, it's just a situation of this is just such Ulsan. Like, they go out there and they beat Kawasaki Frontale again. Like, Frontale just does. I'm sure they never want to see Ulsan in this competition again. And Frontale doesn't do well in this tournament. We know that, but for Ulsan to just keep getting one better than the best team in Japan, lovely, big fan of that. And then they go out there and they just Ulsan, there's no other way to put it in this one. They just went out there and they Ulsan'd.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to weigh in on that thing, but no, I mean, I don't know. I can see sitting on the fence, see both sides of the argument. Punch keeps the play going, but I don't think it was an easy height to punch, and catch. He could have probably distributed it quicker. Perhaps he should have just jumped in the air and done a massive volley, but that opinion never gets mentioned. Anyway, we're going to move on.
Where was the bicycle kick option? Why haven't we talked about that? Bike it all the way down to the other end of the field. I don't know why nobody's brought that up.
Whatever happened, he had to make a decision to get it back in play. I fully agree with that. Then he had to, whatever he did, he had to be quick, and it just went completely wrong. And like you said, it was a number of things for him, but there's a number of things for Ulsan as well.
Yeah. And this is the last thing I'll say about it, so we can move on from the conversation. But I think for me, the biggest issue is just that this comes down to how goalkeepers are taught in K-League. I mean, we dedicated an entire podcast to this, basically, which I'll repost it or dig through our archives for it. A really great chat with some coaches in Korea. I almost said here in Korea. I'm not there. But that decision making of when to get the ball and when to punch, I just don't think that goalkeepers are taught well in that regard. I just don't. Not in K-League, and they are too quick to punch, which is too messy, and this is what happens.
Indeed. Well, we can end things on a lighter note there regarding K-League teams, because there was one team that, while they didn't get through, did enough to perhaps warrant some applause. And that was the John Nam Dragons. And well, I've not really heard much about them. You don't really speak too much about them, Ryan. But I hope you've done some. I hope you've done some research. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is a team that I probably should talk about more often. A team that I should probably follow them a little closer. No, the Dragons, I mean, what a showing. They went out, they got the 6 points in the matches that you would expect them to get 6 points in. That first match against United City, I think it was way closer than it should have been. I think they played the first half of that game thinking they were in K-League too. We talked about this at the time. We talked about it during some of the pod specials while I was in Bangkok, but they learned from that. They learned, and I think getting a draw against the champions from Australia and the champions from Thailand for a K-League 2 team that's mid-table right now, that's a pretty good accomplishment. And I think the only real frustration that I would say that I had coming out of that group stage was that I don't think Melbourne was better than them in either game. I just don't. And, congrats to Melbourne on back-to-back premierships down in Australia. Good on you. I don't think they had a very good ACL. I know they went undefeated, Melbourne did, but I was not very impressed with them in a lot of the games that they played, and they just weren't better than Jensen in either of those games. So that one stings that they lost to Melbourne, especially in the fashion that they did, because I thought the Dragons played that first half was some really great football in that first match against Melbourne, and that one hurt a little bit. Also, when you're missing your top goal scorer from the year prior, Balotelli wasn't there for us. Kim Hyun-wook wasn't there in the midfield. Those two would have made a difference, and maybe they get out of this group. But I definitely do think that there should be a lot of respect for K-League 2 coming out of this group, because none of those matches were easy. Even BG's win, that was not an easy win for BG. That was scoreless at halftime. And BG was at home, So I don't think that the Dragons didn't make it easy for anybody. You could argue that they should have won one, maybe two more games. And I think that is a damn fine tournament for a K2 club that's there, having won the FA Cup.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. And they go back to K-League 2 now.
It's been going great.
I was going to say, it's been going great. How do you think the Champions League is going to, affect things for them? They are ninth at the moment. Obviously, got a few games in hand.
Yeah. I thought it would be a really good confidence boost, and maybe it still will be for them, because to go toe to toe. I mean, yeah, okay. Look, United City hadn't played competitively. We talked about them plenty. I thought United City actually did well, all things considered. But to go toe-to-toe with BG and Melbourne the way that they did, I thought that would carry over into K-League 2. But I think what's happened instead is that they've reverted back to the way that they've played in K-League 2, which, to be frank, is more boring. It's just this ultra defensive way of being that is Jensen's DNA, but especially in that first Melbourne match, I think this team showed that they have the talent to play in a different way. And I wish they would do that more often, where they were just fast. They were small and fast, and they used the wings. They used the middle of the pitch well in that game as well. And they did that against BG at times as well. So I would like the momentum to carry over. And obviously there'll be a different team with Balotelli and Kim Hyun-wook, but it hasn't carried over as quickly as I would have hoped.
Well, we'll have to see how it all goes now. Only the K-League team. Okay, it could win the FA Cup again. Who knows? But
be amazing.
I was going to ask you. I did have other questions written down. I was going to say, do you like Leonard Polana? And do you like scoring goals in the rain? And but we'll leave your K-League karaoke contribution.
As I say, this is an off night for the holidays. I'm on water tonight.
All right. Okay.
It is still in a Singa glass because that's how it's done here.
Yeah.
But I'm behaving myself, so karaoke is not in my near future. I don't know. I do need to wander out into the night and get dinner soon. So
who knows what will happen?
Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen then?
And well, yeah, and who knows what's going to happen with K-League this weekend? Because well, things continue on KLeague.com this week with previews for K-League 1 and K-League 2. Brainerd went on then. Sorry, it's 9 o'clock and it's been a while since we've done the pod. It's a bit earlier for you over there. I'm sorry. I've gone. I've checked out. We've got that. We have the marquee match previews as well over on KLeague.com this week. We've also got K-League Survivor this week. It's back. It's back on Patreon as well as a lot of other things. You can... We've got injury news. Sorry, I'm doing really well, Ryan. Would you like to take this for me?
I'm not hosting this week, man.
Oh, well, I mean, normally you give this to me, and I am okay. Fine, right? Let's do this. Let's do this one last time, right? So, take two.
Yep.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, over on our Patreon, we have K-League Survivor this week. You can sign up for the K3 Champions here at $1. That includes Survivor, although no more new entries for that at the moment, but it does let you join our community. We have the K2 Champion tier at $3. On there, we give long read articles and monthly stat pieces, as well as pod extras, behind the scenes outtakes. Well, no outtakes yet. We could put this in an outtake, I suppose. And then we've got the K1 Champion 5 tier. That includes injury news, which will be out on Thursday this week. So expect all the latest information on all the latest information on injury news. I see we do have a question in from Mike Baston about Kim Yong-Gwon. We'll be including information on him there. If you'd like to follow us live, you can do so on FNR every Thursday. You can also follow us on all podcasting apps, including Apple Music, Spotify, Google Podcast, and more. If you want to follow us on social, you can do all those social network sites at K-League United. But that about wraps things up, thankfully, for us this week. I've been Matthew Binns. Thank you, Ryan, for calling in from Thailand.
Yep,
And
thanks for having me.
We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
정조선 공격 복격기 김신